apparently not going to take questions after that spirited defense of a wall, the need for a wall on the border. The president saying we have no choice but to build a wall on the border as he was announcing a 3-week deal that didn't include any money for the border wall that he had been saying all along was his one condition in order to reopen the government. I want to go straight to our congressional correspondent, Mary Bruce. You know, Mary, you wouldn't really know it from the speech the president gave right there, but he completely gave up, at least for the next 3 weeks, on the wall.
Yeah, George, this agreement gives Democrats exactly what they have been asking for throughout this entire shutdown, a short-term solution to reopen the government, buy them time to negotiate that does not give the president any funding for his wall. And it does seem that this plan could pass here as early as today. The question then becomes what comes next, because despite this bruising political fight that we have seen, reopening the government may be the easy part here. Now they have the challenge of trying to keep the government open, which means that they now have 3 weeks to do what they could not do here over the last 5 weeks, somehow come to a broader agreement on border security, George.
Right, and that is the problem in the long. Nothing has changed from this agreement, except they're going to have a little more time to negotiate. Meantime, Mary, do we think now, assuming this gets done over the weekend, State of the Union back on for Tuesday?
That is the big question here, because, of course, the agreement to postpone the State of the Union was only so long as the government remained closed. Assuming the government is back up and running, it does seem like it is a very real possibility that we will actually have a State of the Union address here on Tuesday.
Okay, let me go to Terry Moran now at the White House. Terry, the president completely gave up on the wall for now. It appears that he really had no choice. The political pressure is building. 6 Republicans abandoned him in the Senate yesterday. We have this brand new poll out right now showing that the public was blaming the president and the GOP for the shutdown. Also had driven his poll ratings and his approval rating down to 37%. That is the lowest approval rating for any president at the 2-year mark of his term, Terry.
And you could feel that here, George. Let me just give you a sense of what was going on. It was a scramble here as the White House was responding to what was going on Capitol Hill, really, because the Republicans on Capitol Hill couldn't take that pressure either. And in order to give this an aura of victory, the president, you heard the applause, he called in his entire cabinet, the mayors who were visiting today, and much of the White House staff just to stand in and give the sound of applause while he stood and caved, as you pointed out. There's no question that he has felt that this is a deal he could have had weeks ago. Nancy Pelosi said, let's keep the rest of the government open. Let's talk about Homeland Security and let's get going. There was no sign at that point. So the question is, having owned the shutdown proudly, as he said in the Oval Office, what did he get for it?
So far, nothing yet. The government will reopen, assuming this does pass. The president began his remarks by thanking the federal workers who have endured this hardship over the last few weeks. And I want to bring in David Curley, our senior transportation correspondent, because the other big factor here this morning was a major airline shutdown stall all across the East Coast because several air traffic controllers didn't come to work.
You know, there's been talk about this all along, George, that at some point the controllers who've been working without paychecks, longer shifts than normal, might start calling in sick. It happened this morning at 2 centers, one in Washington, D.C., one in Jacksonville, Florida. That slowed traffic in both over Florida and over the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic. In fact, there was a ground stop at LaGuardia this morning for nearly an hour. So basically slowing down the system to keep it safe. We have learned that the 13 controllers that were supposed to be on schedule at the center outside of Washington today, 6 of them called out and did not come to work. So you had this rippling through the system, very slow air traffic control, and you can see it in the delays all across the country. It will take most of the day to kind of flush that system out and get things back to normal. So they'll be happy today that they are going to get a paycheck and maybe some relief. And all across those who have been affected. Take a look at a food bank for the Coast Guardsmen in New London, Connecticut. This was a wife of a Coast Guardsman watching on her phone the president saying that this is over. They're going to get a check. They're happy about it. So at least now, for a couple of weeks, these folks are going to get paid, back on the job, and then they hope that the government stays open, George.
What a relief for those 800,000 federal workers who've had to bear this sacrifice. They and their families have borne this sacrifice over the last 3 weeks. Assuming this goes through over the weekend, they will be back to work on Monday. The back pay, as the president said, should come through very quickly. So the president announcing right there the government should reopen. There's been a deal with senators and members of Congress up on Capitol Hill. Government should reopen at least for 3 weeks. We'll have full details tonight on World News Tonight with David Muir. Have a good afternoon.
This has been a special report from ABC News.